Once again, good morning, everyone who's joining us. I'm Michaela Blockner. I'm the managing editor at No-Till Farmer. Thank you for joining us this morning, or afternoon or night, depending on where our panelists are today, for our Ask the Operator webinar, International No-Till Perspectives. Like Loran mentioned, A&I Products is our 2023 Conservation Ag Operator Fellowship sponsor, and we thank them for their support. Just a few things I want to mention before I ask our panelists to introduce themselves. On your screen, you'll see a control panel with a Q&A icon. You could submit questions here at any time during the presentation, and I'll take those as they come in. And we are recording today's session in the event you want to share it with your neighbors, any farmer-led groups, or anybody else. So with that, Loran, I will hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, Michaela, once again for hosting this, and thanks to our panelists for jumping on at all hours of the day. We're going to keep this pretty light and fluffy today, but I thought it was kind of relevant. You know, one of our better ones was the Ukrainian presentation we did early this spring, and then last year again. And today is day 499. So I thought it would be kind of a nice day to get a little bit of an international perspective from some top producers around the world. We've got my intern here is she from France. We've got Tim representing Thailand, Alexander representing Germany, and Tom Robinson's the late owl tonight. So he's actually ahead of us. It's evening there in Australia, so we'll probably let him go first. If you want to do a quick introduction, Tom, just kind of tell us about your farming practices and what you have going on there in Australia.
Yeah, well, g'day everybody. It's 10 p.m. Friday night here in Australia, and so thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this. It's fantastic that you're putting it on. So I farm with my wife Cassie, my father Ashley, and mother Kayleen in southern Australia. So we farm. If you looked at a map of Australia, we're pretty well, in the middle, down the bottom. Very Mediterranean climate, 13 to 16 inch rainfall country. Our winters, we don't have snow, we don't get that cold, so we actually grow spring crops over winter. It's all about moisture conservation, stubble retention, and in the last 15 to 20 years, that soil health side of things really coming into play. And being efficient with inputs as well. That's where we're moving to now, is this real efficiency in inputs. So, we make our own trace element sprays. We buy the raw product. We make it ourselves. We've cut our fertilizer usage by 3/4. We've reduced our herbicide use by 2/3. Just really trying to get a handle on that, on being super profitable when the rainfall allows us to be. Which is really important here in Australia. So, and Australia is a really big place too. Most of the cropping is done through the bottom side of Australia, and that's all grain crops like wheat and barley, peas, beans, lentils, canola. And then as you get more into northern Australia, that's more tropical. So Mediterranean down the bottom and tropical up the top, and not a lot in the middle. So, pretty well sheep, cattle country, really big station country through the centre. But cropping, winter cropping, or spring cropping all through the eastern side of Australia. So I hope that's a pretty brief overview there, Loran, if that makes sense.
Oh, very, very good. And thank you for jumping on here. You reminded me of a good story with your mother, Super Bowl Sunday. So someday, if people want to hear a good story, ask me about Super Bowl Sunday.
Super Bowl Sunday in southern Australia. Yes.
Alexander, are you in a place where you can talk? Introduce yourself quick.
Yeah, hi Loran. So Alexander Klümper, my name. I do no-tillage now since 8 years. On my farm, we're here in eastern Germany. Low rainfall area. That means here like around 450 milliliters. What is something like, I think 16, 17 inches maybe. Some years we can just have 300 millimeters that gets really dry. We grow wheat, rye, barley, peas, canola. But here we have the winter canola variety and grain corn. And with insecticides and fungicides, we got pretty low already. It's a nodal system, so we go down a little bit every year. I would say now after 8 years, maybe in total, all the pesticides were maybe down to the half. And in fertilizer, we do Holtane system. It's a continuous uptake, long-term ammonium nutrition. Liquid fertilizer ammonium, where you go with a spike roll that injects it very concentrated into the soil. So the soil bacteria, they cannot form it to nitrate. Then we have less losses again, and healthier plants don't need grow regulators. I'm starting as well with compost extracts and compost as a seed cover. And that's pretty much it. And today is first day in harvest. But right now I'm on the very, very sandy soils here, so low yield area. And in compared to the rest of Germany, I already have a bit continental climate. So not continental like you have in Australia or Central America, central of United States, sorry. But we're not so close to the ocean like West Germany, Netherlands, France, so on. Yeah, that's
Thank you
for now.
Thank you for that, Alexander. And I mean, Alexander was one of the first people I thought of when we started throwing this one together because of a conversation he and I had here a couple months ago, or weeks ago, I guess it was. But I really want to trigger you guys' thoughts on the future of agriculture in your areas. So with that, Tim, can you kind of jump on and introduce yourself? I know you're here in the States today, but give us a little of your background.
Yeah, so I'm Tim Welsh. I grew up on a farm in northeastern Iowa, up in the far northeast corner near Minnesota and Wisconsin, where I am now. I have a farm here that I own and currently rent out to a conventional grower doing, he's a dairy farmer, and he's doing no-till corn, minimum till beans, and he runs his dairy heifers on our pastures. We do a pasture rotation program here, and so I'm here for the summer and enjoying a little more time here. In my other life, I live in Thailand, in Bangkok. We have a company called AgriSource, which is a food and agribusiness consulting company. We represent several U.S. export commodity groups, including, Tom, you might be interested, the U.S. Dry Pea and Lentil Council and the Dry Bean Council. We do a lot of market promotion and export development work for those groups. We've also had in the past a hybrid seed company called Seed Asia, where we were doing tropical hybrid corn and other field crops in Southeast Asia, mostly Thailand, but some in Cambodia and Myanmar. But we cover, in our consulting business, we work with a number of other agribusiness companies and covering mostly the, say, 6 or 8 countries in Southeast Asia and a little bit in India and Pakistan as well. So I'm currently kind of slowing down on the business, working more remotely and turning it over to our staff and trying to spend more time here at our farm. So that's kind of my story. So,
well, thank you, Tim. And now we'll go to our special guest here from France. Take
Hi,
away.
everyone. So my name is Ashley Ferrot. I come from France. I grew up on the family farm. I'm 19 and I'm currently studying in a program in France focusing on agroecology and food system. My uncle took over the family farm a few years ago, which now covers around 1,500 acres. with crops including wheat, barley, rapeseed, sunflower, alfalfa, and fava beans. And we also have sucralose and maybe 20, 25 resources. My uncle and me, I've been working with no-till for 2 years now. So.
And your mother and father?
Yeah, my mother and father work for vineyards in France. So my father works for a company that sells wine growing equipment, and my mother managed a team of 65 wine growers in France.
All righty, thank you for that. And for the listeners, if you guys want to punch in questions, Michaela will try to flag me down a little bit, but I've got a list of questions I want to kick off with. And probably the biggest one I want to start with is your individual markets and basis. You know, where is your main markets, and how do you guys handle that in country? Tom, if you want to go first.
Yeah, so Australia is a net exporter of most of our produce. We're a big country with considerable, not a lot of people, and you know we produce a lot of a lot of export commodities. So the whole trade trade embargo with China has really put a hold on the barley market into China. Aussie barley has been going into Saudi Arabia lately. Fair chunk of barley into there. Like I said, peas and lentils go into that Indonesia, Bangladesh, India, Bangladesh markets. Indonesia takes a lot of barley and wheat as well. Our wheat ends up all over the world in places. So a lot of it leaves by boat pretty well. Even I've got a friend who's an apple grower. A lot of his produce ends up in Asia. A lot of our seafood ends up in Asia. It's the containerizing market was sensational when we were bringing in car parts and things like that, and we were still building cars in Australia. We are no longer building cars in Australia, so the container market, getting hold of good shipping containers to be able to fill, is hard work. So lately with containerized markets going through the roof, like containers going through the roof in price-wise, a lot of bulk shipments have been going out instead. Also, another market for us personally is also into the meat, bird, chicken market. That is also a major export of meat, chicken, birds, frozen packed. So we've got a feed mill, about an hour to an hour and a half trucking drive away. So yeah, we were very fortunate. We're close to 2 or 3 local ports because we're about an hour off the sea. And the latest cool thing that's happened in the last 3, 4, 5 years is actually farmers storing their grain on farm, and we're selling. We take a contract. And that will be what we call delivered at the wharf. And we're literally driving up a drive-over hopper, and we're tipping our road trains up, and we're tipping that grain into a hopper, and it's going straight up a belt, straight into the boat, which is saving, $20 to $25 a tonne in storage and handling fees that those exporters are able to hand on to us. But we need to, store our grain on farm. So that is a lot of our lentils are done that way in southern Australia at the moment, straight down to the wharf, tipping onto a grid, straight up into a boat.
Alexander, same question. How's your markets and basis currently?
So here we have plenty corporations around that usually buy your grain. Normally it is when I try to sell, let's say, my wheat during harvest, they have always one thing what they find to complain. It's a protein, or it's this numbers, or that numbers, or that numbers. So personally myself, I have an own storage. I can store around 5,000 tons in total. And I sell it later during the year. And all of a sudden, all the numbers are fine. So usually they use this when you come with your truck, deliver to them. Oh, these numbers are not right. These numbers are not right, and then you don't sell the wheat for the human nutrition. Then you sell it for animal feed, and then you get less money for it. So that's why I store it and I wait what's happening on the market, and then I sell it. We have the River Rhine very close to us, what goes up to Hamburg and then to the Northern Sea. And one port is half hour from us, another port is 1 hour from us. So it's pretty easy to deliver there. Sometimes as well in Western Germany and Netherlands, they have a lot of pigs and chickens there. So a lot of barley and corn can go to these areas. Sometimes it goes directly to the farmers, but usually it always works with the big dealers, with the corporations. So as well, like you guys, we have Cargill is 1 hour from me, and Bunge, and Germany, it depends on, sometimes we're exporting, sometimes we're importing. The thing is, this year, plenty farmers stopped with the animals, with the pigs, because they put so high restrictions on you. It looks like more and more is going down to Spain, because they just have less restrictions than us.
One thing, when I was there, you had barges bringing in manure from the Netherlands. Is that still there?
Sometimes it happens. Yeah, it's pretty much politically driven. Every time they do a weird new law, all of a sudden there's a lot of manure there that they cannot take them themselves, or they have too much in West Germany, and then they deliver it to East Germany. During the last years, they put a lot in this biogas plants. So it was getting harder to get the chicken manure, but then you get the waste material from the biogas plants. But it's very hard to plan. It's really like every year is different.
Thank you for that. Tim, you want to give your perspective from
Sure.
South?
Yeah, the markets that we cover mainly are Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, some in Cambodia and Laos, and also Myanmar or Burma. Those countries combined, the total population is about 700 million people. Nothing compared to China, of course, but it's still a lot of people. So in terms of, we cover a number of different commodities besides the pulse crops, the dry peas, lentils, and dry beans and chickpeas. We also work with U.S. potatoes for Myanmar and doing export promotion. And then also we work with the Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute on promoting Alaska seafood in the region. So there's a lot of different balls that we're juggling. But I'd say in terms of the markets in Southeast Asia, the biggest trends that are going on right now is just number one is the population base is large, 700 million people. I would say probably across the region, maybe a third of those folks are relatively low income, but you have a really large, maybe, 200-300 million people of middle or upper middle income people who have a lot of purchasing power. So the markets are really changing fast. Lots of new young consumers trying lots of new food. They're traveling. Quite fast change there in the region. The other big thing is, of course, the influence of China, but also the trade impacts of the U.S.-China relationship. Effectively, what's happened over the last few years in our region that hit us is that a lot of companies are trying to get out of China, and they're shifting their processing or whatever they can, they're shifting it down to Southeast Asia. There's still a huge amount in China, but for reasons of the trade war and as well as the COVID, China put a lot of restrictions on products going in there during the COVID period, and quite unreasonable. But from their point of view, that was they felt like imported products could bring in COVID. So a lot of companies, including Chinese companies, are shifting down into Southeast Asia, and so a lot of the work we're doing is working with companies to find local processors or partners and people that they can work with to import, process, and re-export or develop markets in Southeast Asia. So in terms of those countries, one comment I wanted to make is Thailand is the only country, and the reason we're based there, it's the only country in Asia that's a net food exporter. They're number one they used to be number one in rice. Now I think it's Vietnam. They're number one in rubber production. They do, I think, number 5 in the world in poultry processing. A lot of other crops that they're very diverse range of crops. Of course, it's all tropical production. So it's a real interesting region to be working. I think I say it's somewhat like Alexander's region in Europe, where we have a lot of countries, a lot of different languages, a lot of cultures and food and ag types. So just still growing and still expanding in that region. So anyway, those are kind of the main trends, I'd say, in our part of the world where we're working.
Hey, Tim, can I just ask why the shift? Is it wages? Is China becoming too expensive to do business in?
Well, the key driver was the U.S. trade war with China. That the previous administration put import tariffs on products from China, and of course China retaliated and put products on import tariffs on U.S. products going in, and like Alaska seafood, for instance, probably, I don't know, at least better than half or 3/4 of the seafood that's caught in Alaska is going. A lot of it's going to Asia for main processing, like filleting and packaging. And of course, U.S. consumers, they don't want to see a made in China package on the fish that they buy at Costco. So the Chinese ship it down to Southeast Asia, put it in a bag and ship it back to the U.S. or ship it to Europe or Australia, whatever. So this kind of trade stuff is driven a lot by the trade war, and the other big thing is that's really not talked about a lot is China's going through a tremendous demographic shift within the country. Their population's leveling out. Their folks don't want to work in low-paying, hard jobs. It's basically labor economics, and labor and trade economics is what it comes down to. So that's why we see these shifts. And then the populations are just so huge and still growing relatively fast and very young. It's kind of like Japan, their population is aging, but it's still pretty big. But in Southeast Asia, I think like Vietnam now, most Americans can relate to Vietnam because of the Vietnam War. But like, I think 75 or 80% of the people in Vietnam weren't even alive in 1975 when the war ended. It's a really young, and it's nearly 100 million people in Vietnam now. So, huge populations, fast growing incomes, and just a lot of change, really quick change, which we're really not used to relatively speaking, in the U.S. So those are the kind of things that are driving the situation there. So,
Sheikh, you want to?
So in France, with my uncle, we decided to work only with wholesalers because it means that we have less intermediaries on our supply chain, so we sell our production with higher price. so we can sign contracts before the harvesting from all our crops, and it makes a good job for the moment. So we still continue with this system. Our production used to be to feed food and for rapeseed and sunflower used to make biofuel, and the most part of the French farmers sell their crops for farmer cooperatives, but it's not a big deal for us because we prefer working with wholesalers and make more benefits.
One of the things that's came up here is the political landscape and COVID. How has that affected your farming operations? If you want to go around the horn again, Alexander, you good spot where you can speak here quick? Trying to give you priority because you're the busiest one.
Yeah, it's fine right now. So the COVID time, just as a farmer, it was not really big trouble. I mean, we had a bit more work, like that they could not deliver the fungicides or herbicides that we needed to drive there. But out of that, just for the farm itself, the restrictions didn't really give us any trouble. And being in the countryside, life was kind of normal. Very different to being in the big cities. What changed more was now with the Ukraine war. But so personally myself, I have to say, I still had my whole harvest in the shed when the war started. So for me, was perfect for selling it. But obviously, on the other hand, Europe is in this energy crisis. And it started already almost 2 years ago. So it started before the Ukraine war that, everything was based on energy. And in the end, nitrogen fertilizer is based on energy. The ton of urea got up till 900 euro, so $800 around. Vice versa, almost $1,000. 21. And with the Ukraine war, it was going up till 1,200, 1,300 euro per ton. And now we are back to, I think, 450, 500 euro. What is, in compared to the last 2 years, kind of okay, but still pretty high. As well, on the other hand, the grain prices are higher than they were before the Ukraine war. So kind of fits together. I started to calculate the tons of fertilizer and canola and wheat in grams of gold. That makes it easier in this inflationary times to get kind of relation between the prices, because it's in the end it's just the euro is losing value, the dollar is losing value, all the currencies are losing value, and the energy crisis just came on top. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, sounds pretty similar to Alex, actually. Like, you know, COVID out in the country areas in Australia was pretty good, actually. Not hardly any COVID cases around, and the cities had a bit of a lockdown, but, out in the country areas, it was pretty good and pretty easy going, carefree. There was talk that we weren't going to get chemicals and parts and stuff, but, we ended up getting it all. And, so having actually, getting chemicals and parts and things are actually a bit more of a problem now than it probably was during COVID. for no real reason, whether it's just an excuse that that's what they're doing. And then like, the Ukraine war, hate making money out of misery, but the wheat price went from that $300 mark up over $400 a ton. So for us being a main exporter, our prices did jump quite a bit on the back of the Ukraine war. So, but yeah, it hasn't been massive for us in Australia.
Yeah, Southeast Asia, it's, some of the impacts I mentioned about China before. Otherwise, I think it's been pretty much back to normal. We've had some recurrences of outbreaks, in different countries. I think some of it's, some of the cities are so many people, like Bangkok's 12 million people. And so an outbreak gets started and it takes off. Trade-wise, I don't think COVID has been as much of a impact. Maybe the case numbers were lower overall than a lot of places through the region. But yeah, I would say, impact on the business side it's getting back to normal. So the Ukraine war, I think the biggest impact we're seeing is a lot of Russians coming into, especially Thailand, to escape the conscription or just getting out of Russia. And it's driving up property values. They're buying condos and everything else. So it's a ripple effects from things go a long way sometimes. So.
If you wanna.
And so what happened in France is clearly the same thing that happened in Germany, with Alexander talked about. But one of the great things happened in France is the development of local farmers and local shops, because the government set up laws that constrains people to work and can display themselves in a perimeter of 10 kilometers around their house. So the government allow the farmers and local store to develop the local shop, and it's a great thing that happened in France. Now it's still a good market, but people take over their job, and now they can go on their job places. So this market decreased a little bit, but it's still here, and it's a great thing.
Okay, next thing I kind of want to dive into, and I'll get us to where we're going here. We got some guys asking, are we going to talk about no-till and that? So I guess where I want to go with the whole political thing is, how is some of the current political restrictions and stuff like that you're seeing and facing affecting your farming practices? Alexander, if you want to jump in on that one.
Yeah, we always have the trouble with what's going to happen with the glyphosate. So this year we're still allowed to use it. Next year we don't know. When you watch the media, all the NGOs and all the media are always, there's every day a new story. What glyphosate is doing bad to the environment, to the insects, to the health, so on. But the thing is, we're using glyphosate different than you guys are allowed to. We just use it to one time get it clean before or after we're seeding, because we don't have the GMOs, we don't have Roundup Ready crops. So there is no possibility in Europe that the glyphosate gets into your food. And that's the thing, but they're still discussing it. And yesterday, European office said there's no reason to ban it. But unfortunately, we have a Green Party right now in our government. And I'm not too sure. So first of all, I don't know what Europe will do. European law is above the German law. But second is Germany is start doing things like putting special restrictions. For example, when you have your farm in a water secure area, or I don't know if that's the right word, where they're pumping the water for the big cities, the groundwater. In that areas, you're no more allowed to use glyphosate. That means you're now doing more tillage there. And when you're doing more tillage, you have more nitrate in the water. So it's a lot of bullshit going on. And another trouble is in whole Germany, they were putting some restrictive areas few years ago. And they said it will only have an impact on you if you have grassland. So nobody was going against it because it said no, on farming land it will not have any impact. And now they are changing it and they are discussing that in 2024, in 25, we are no more allowed to use any fertilizers there and any pesticides. So if they would do that, we are forced to do organic farming there with all this tillage and plowing and harrowing and all those stuff. And this reserve areas is half of the country. So no country in Europe was doing it this kind of stupid. Stupid from the perspective. The Green Party thinks it's amazing. And as well, half of my farm is in that area. And the half of the farm, what is my best soils, where I make the most profit. So if that would happen, I don't know if I will go on doing farming here. Because I would only keep on with, let's say, one quarter of my farm is still having some difficulties in the no-till system, because I start there with very low soil organic matter, 1.5%. And this soils, they tend to glue. They have trouble that the oxygen gets in. Grain is working there, the peas is working, but canola and corn really can struggle. And the other half, what I would still keep would be the damn sandy soils, like where I'm now on, where I'm happy if I get 3 tons per hectare. And to compare from the good soils, I get 8 tons, or in a good year, even 10. So this crazy green ideology makes it very difficult for us to plan anything. And the trouble is, when you're in that situation, you can no more plan. You don't do any investments, and you start off asking yourself many questions: what you're still doing, and what still makes sense, and what not. This is the annoying thing. And on the other hand, like we have a few big NGOs here. I mean, Greenpeace is the biggest one in WWF. They are worldwide, but as well we have NABU and BUND in Germany, very big ones. And we can see the scientific side from the NABU is working on our side for the no-till system. They want that pesticides are not getting banned, but you still have this, I call them yell heads. That's a German word to use them. They're just yelling. It's kind of a Dunning-Kruger effect. The less you know, the less you're questioning yourself, and the more you go like, "Rrr," and they're yelling around and want everything organic and everything plowing. Why do the farmers not doing it like they did it 100 years ago? They have this kind of romance, how farming was back the days. And there's a lot of panic and not knowledge with the glyphosate and with other topics. And for example, they were banning the these insecticides, neonotics, what we had as a seed coating in oilseed rape. And since we can no more use it in oilseed, most of the farmers, instead of one time spraying insecticide in fall, They are spraying it now like 4 or 5 times, the regular insecticides, because they're just not working against some insects. I mean, here in the no-till system, most time I can still do it with 1 time in fall. But yeah, it could have been way easier. As neonics, sorry, that was the word. And we would use way less if we could still use the right pesticides at the right moment. But more and more restrictions. We're losing one herbicide after the other. So yeah, pretty much glyphosate is the last one we can really use to get the field clean. Like you guys, you still have atrazine, you still have I think gramoxone, you still have the trouble is I have the brand names in my mind, but not the ingredients. I think you still have 50% more herbicides than we do. And yeah, that's pretty much our trouble we have here. So yeah, I go on to the next.
Tom? Yep, thank you. Tom?
We don't have any government subsidies in Australia, so we get no help from our government at all. So in turn, they kind of leave us alone a bit compared to what Alex was talking about. So they don't pay us any subsidies to farm. We get no help from the government. We pay a fair bit of tax if we make good money, if we make good profits. But in turn, we don't have the government restrictions. We have rules and regulations. We need to make MRL standards to all our export countries and things like that. Honestly, our government at the moment couldn't organise a piss up in a brewery. So, that's for them to organise to try and ban a heap of things. Well, it's hard for our government at this point in time. Probably the one thing I will say that's on the cards for the government is actually banning sheep live export. So we actually live export cattle and sheep to a lot of the Asian countries where so we put the sheep and cattle on a boat. They have fantastic conditions on the boat. It is basically a feedlot on water. They gain weight all the way over. And because those countries don't have a lot of refrigeration, those cattle and sheep are slaughtered when needed. So there'll be sheep and cattle go into local communities and slaughtered one by one to feed local communities because there's no electricity, no refrigeration. So the government are trying to outlaw live export. So there's multiple reasons why they want to do that for animal welfare, but the numbers stack up sensationally for it. We've got good markets for it. We're doing it extremely well. The animals gain weight all the way over. That's probably the one thing that's happening in Australia at the moment.
Tim, care to give your perspective?
Yeah, Southeast Asia, I think the biggest trends or differences, number one is lots of small-scale farmers, and the percentage of farmers in the total populations is a lot higher than here in the U.S. or probably even in Europe. Like in Thailand, we're probably at least 40% of the population is still farming, but they're farming probably an average farm size of maybe 5 acres or 10 acres or something. So, and in Myanmar, or Vietnam, they maybe have 2 acres, and there's 50 or 60% of the population is farming. So, and a lot of them are subsistence or very not focused on it as a business. It's just the way of life. It's impacting what the governments can do on policy and changes and trying to introduce new technology and things like that. But there still is a lot going on. The other big thing is I guess you could say the general introduction of technology just takes time because of that educational problems. The other big impact is on environmental. Air quality is a real problem in Southeast Asia now, and with climate change, global warming, whatever you want to call it, it's definitely happening there. We're seeing big impacts, the heat, record heat. And so the governments are across the board are introducing new legislation to cut down, like on field burning of rice area, cutting out, trying to get better air quality, not just in the cities, but it's impacting even the rural areas. Kind of like what we saw in the Midwest here last week and the week before with the Canadian wildfires. It's happening all across the region. So those kind of bigger scale trends are what's happening. More awareness about climate change, and the governments are trying to influence, but it takes time because you have a lot of low income, small scale farmers that, they see their local influence, but they don't see maybe the bigger picture sometimes. So
when they implement such regulation, are they offering incentives or something to help mitigate the damage to the farmer?
Yeah, they are. Like, for instance, sugarcane is a big crop in Thailand. It's one of the larger producers in the world. And in the past, up until the last few years, they would burn the sugarcane crop before they'd go out and cut it. And most of it was cut by hand, like people literally walking out through the fields and cutting every cane, stacking it up, and then it gets hauled off to the sugar mills. A lot of that industry is really run by the sugar mills. It's maybe 8 or 10 companies that have most of the mills around the country. So what the government did was went to the sugar mills, and the mills contract, that's about a 3 or 4 year crop. The mills contract the production with these small scale growers, and they do a lot of the operations in the field, the planting, the harvesting. So a lot of the land is rented out to these mills, or effectively rented out. And the government basically implemented the policy through the sugar mills and gave some incentives to them to stop the burning, bringing in a lot of sugarcane harvesters, mechanized harvesting machines from Australia, some from the US, now even some local production. And that's helped a lot, but there's still, still a lot of rice straw burning, whatever. It's helped the sugarcane crop, but that's like one crop out of many in the country. So.
You want to go, Stan?
It's France, so we are subject about the European restrictive. So it's kind of same thing that happened for Alexander in Germany. But one of the greatest thing that did the government, they set up subsidies for young farmers to take over farms and to invest on new equipment. So these subsidies can incite young people to take over a farm and invest on new technologies and new equipment that makes our agriculture more resilient and more attractive. So this is kind of the biggest problem we have in France, the aging of farmers. So the half of the farmers' population have between 60 and 65 years old. So this is really, baddest thing that happened in France, and we don't have enough young farmers. The new generation won't take over the farm, and that's really difficult. So now one of the biggest challenge in France is to incite and to invest on our schools and education to improve the farmer population and to incite the young farmers and the new generation to take over farm and make our farm perennial.
Thank you, guys. Next question I have is farmer to farmer sharing. How do you guys share ideals? And we go to conferences and stuff like that, and I see a lot of foreigners come to the United States conferences, but I see very few Americans go to foreign conferences. So what conferences would you recommend on the foreign picture, I guess. Alexander, if you want to start again, looks like you got time.
Yeah, so I gave, so considering the no-tillage topic and the regenerative agriculture, I have my YouTube channel where I'm explaining to farmers what I'm doing here, what is working, what is not working, where's the struggles, where's the good things. And yeah, we have a lot of people with interest now into no-tillage. So I made a Telegram group 2 years ago. We have now 1,300 people already in that group. And when you just think that maybe in Germany we have 100,000 farmers, so that's 1 out of 1,000 from the population almost. That's already pretty much. So there's many people having interest in the topic. Yeah, we have the on-farm meetings. We have our what is it here? Association for no-tillage in Germany. They organize these field days. They organize some conferences. So pretty much the knowledge is no more the problem. It's just people don't start buying a no-till drill when they don't know if they can still use glyphosate next year. So you just don't have the security for your investment and for the change. More and more farmers see, because of the extreme, the climate is getting a bit more extreme. We have more the heavy rainfalls. Europe doesn't have it too much because it's a very small continent. So from water to water, it's not much land in between. That's why we don't get this heavy extremes like you have. But yeah, it's happening once in a while that they have a lot of erosion, that a city is going into water and mud, and there's coming more interest in total. Maybe very quick to the topic from the last question again, about the subsidies. The trouble is here, the subsidies are not helping us. It makes it almost impossible for a farmer to buy land because not from the new system, from the old system, what was still valid last year, we received like 300 euro of subsidies per hectare. And 300 euro of subsidies lead to an increase of 300 euro per hectare for the rent, when you rent your land. And in East Germany, so the ex-communistic part, 80% of the land is still rented, maybe 20 is owned. In West and South Germany, it's way more what is owned. Maybe, I guess 60-70% is owned in Western Germany. So, but the thing is, it's increasing the rent. And since the financial crisis and the low interest rate we had of 1%, the ratio between buying and renting it was going up to 1%. So that means if you pay 300 euro of rent, because of the 300 euro of subsidies you receive, your shitty farmland goes up to 30,000 euro, just because of the subsidies. So no matter where you are in Germany, with all the subsidies, a farmland, every hectare would be 30,000 euro cheaper. So that means the shitty soil would almost be for free, and the good soils would still be kind of high. And because we have a lot of industry in Germany, and they were very afraid after the financial crisis of inflation, they bought big farms in East Germany for millions of euros. So almost every time a big farm with 2,000 or 3,000 hectares gets sold, it's no more the farmer buying it, it's industry buying it. And that we have since almost 15 years now. That is really causing trouble, and they see the farmland like Bitcoin. It's very expensive, but it doesn't have the value. So in compared to France or to England, farmland in good spots in Germany is like 4 times too expensive if you want to pay it off with a yield you receive from the field. So in the end, that means it makes no more sense to buy land. You stay renting it. That's a lot of trouble what we're having as well. But really, since the financial crisis, and also farmers that are a bit smarter, they say we don't want this damn subsidies. Put them away. It would be 1 or 2 years a bit heavy, restructuring everything new, making new contracts with the landlords, but then life would be more market driven again. I mean, they did the same in New Zealand almost 40 years ago, and I think 1% of the farmers got bankrupt in that year. Well, we lose 1% of the farmers every year anyway. So because we have the same problem, what you said in France, not enough young people that wants to work in the farm business. So of course, all the machines have to get bigger because you don't get good people anymore. That's a big problem as well. Yeah, that's from my side.
Yeah, so conferences and catch-ups, I suppose. The thing here in Australia is, farms are pretty far between. Reasonably large farms, so there's not the farmers around. Dad talks about, filling a room for a conference where there, for a Santfer, when Santfer used to have 400 farmers in the room. Well, now we were lucky to have 100. Australia is Southern Australia is mostly doing no-till anyway because of the profitability around it, the moisture conservation. Probably the one thing I'm seeing more and more of is the reliance on an agronomist. We've become applicators, or we've become contractors on our own farm. The agronomist comes out, tells you what to do, and then you go and do it. That's probably the biggest disappointing that I've seen. Young farmers like myself need to be walking fields and understanding chemicals and how they work, and not just following an agronomist's recommendation. Sometimes, and the agronomist hasn't got skin in the game. And what I mean by that is, it's your bank account, it's your money, it's your yields, it's your farm. You've got to be in the steering wheel controlling it all. So, but yeah, why don't you guys come across? Well, I remember reading a statistic that only 4% of Americans have got a passport. So, maybe that's a reason too. And Loran, you've been over to our farm, and you've been over to was it Vic No-Till conference?
Yep.
And a controlled traffic conference.
Controlled traffic.
Yeah, there's heaps to see. There's plenty to do. Australia is an extremely safe country. Come on over, say hi. Come to a conference and jump, hire a vehicle and see where the road takes you.
You tipped on one of the questions we have popping up. What percentage of no-till is in your area?
Oh, it would be 90+%, 90. Yeah, if you see someone out working a paddock, you go, oh, what the hell are they doing that for? What's going on here? And normally it's either a subsoil constraint, or they've gone and put on a heap of gypsum and they're working it in, and then that may go back into no-till. And when I talk no-till, I'm talking knife point press wheel, single pass, and then we talk about zero-till, which is with a disc seeder. So Dad started doing no-till with a knife point press wheel back in the early 90s, and then we went to zero-till with a disc seeder in 2002. So it's an extremely high percentage because of our rainfall and moisture conservation.
Tim, you want to give that one a stab?
Yeah, so conferences and events like this that affecting for the no-till community, there are some specialized ag shows in mostly individual countries set up different things. Mechanization is definitely, a big growing trend. Although the equipment is a lot smaller scale than what we see, it is still pretty good size and getting bigger. And John Deere, Kubota, Klaus, all the, a lot of the ag companies are all there. They're real active. They're producing or assembling or whatever in the region. So those are all more individual country-wise. There are some really big livestock shows like VIV, which I think is based out of Europe, and a couple. They alternate. I forget which the other one is, but they have conferences and a lot of ag livestock related equipment, but ag equipment as well in those shows. And then another one that we've been pretty active in is the Asia Pacific Seed Association. They have a trade show related to their annual meeting, which they rotate around the region. So there's a different shows, more country by country, but plenty of opportunity. No-till, not so specific, but it's definitely a growing trend. So,
You wanna?
In France, 2 years ago, a new movement started, named the Young Farmers, and so there is an association of young farmers raised. I don't know many people they reach, but maybe a lot of young farmers, and it's really great thing. And so they started think about the future of farming practices, the future of farms, and how we can face all the issues we have now and face the issue that our grandfather and father face now. So that's a great thing happened. And on the other hand, we don't have a lot of community of no-till farmers in France. We only have small group of farmers talk together about what happened in their crops, in their farms, but we don't have no-till mentors. We just have some agri-YouTubers, but we don't have really a big community. And I think it's the difference of culture, because in France we don't share our success with other people, and it's our culture. Sorry for that.
What percentage is no-till then?
In France today, it's almost 25,000 of farmers use no-till practices. It's only just 5% of the farmer population. So,
We'll back up to Alexander then. Percentage of farming that is no-till in Germany. You're on mute. You're on mute. Alexander, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. So officially, from the ECAF, they're saying we're 0.8%, but I don't believe it's so much. I would more say it's maybe 0.2 that are really doing no-till permanently.
Wow. I want to jump in here with a couple more no-till specific questions, and then we have a number going back to restrictions. So we'll take those after that. So the next no-till specific one is, and Tom, maybe we can start with you. You kind of mentioned this already. What type of equipment are you using to no-till?
So we run a John Deere 1890 single disc. It's been modified with the attachments that we find work well. We're running a spoke closer. We're running a little narrower seed lock wheel. The biggest thing with no-till is keeping it simple. Starts at harvest, residue management. We run a stripper header for all our cereals, where we've got a MAV chopper on the back of our combine harvester. We're spreading our residues, to the best of our ability. And with the stripper header, we're just not putting that residue through the front. So we're leaving our straw standing so we can drill back into that standing stubble. Sharp discs, that is an absolute no-brainer. Sharp discs in good condition, use good quality discs that last well. And for us in our soil types, weight. weight and down pressure are the two things that we need. So on our John Deere 1890, we've got it weighted to the hilt. I've got another 1.5 tons in the middle, and I've got 600 kilos hanging off of both wings. We're typically, pretty well right up there on the down pressure. Most of the time we do a lot of dry seeding. So coming out of summer, going into winter, we sow 1/2 to 3/4 of our farm dry, bone dry every year before it rains. So getting that perfect seed placement is really critical, and you can do that with sharp discs, a lot of down pressure, and just keep your maintenance up. No-till's simple. You follow those 4 or 5 basic rules, and no-till's pretty easy.
Alexander, you want to jump in?
I use a cross-lot drill, but I built it myself. So I just ordered the openers from New Zealand, and the company here was building the frame for me, because the original cross-lot as a 6 meter would not have been possible with the German law restrictions on the street. So back the days, there was a trouble. There was not much no-till equipment available in Europe. But right now, I think we can choose between, 7, 8, or 9 different drills. So right now, it would really be easy to go to no-till from that perspective. The no-till drill as a cross-lot, I choose it because our soils are extreme heterogeneous. So we have sand in one corner and loam in the other, and maybe a bit clay in between. So I'm really happy with the automatic downforce system here. And many years when we're seeding, it's very dry. And there comes the advantage of that system, that we still have a good emerge. It's a bit heavy, it's a bit extreme, the drill, but it works very good over here. Yeah.
Tim, what would be a no-till planter in Thailand?
Pretty small scale, and a lot of it's even hand done. Like in our seed business that we had about 1,000 farmers under contract seed production, and most of that was hybrid seed production in rice paddies after the main rice crop, and we grew it in the dry season under irrigation. And a lot of those farmers would just leave the rice straw down and go in and hand plant into it, or they'd have a 1-row or 2-row planter. We actually started bringing over John Deere Max-Emerge planters and breaking them down to 2-row 3-point hitch mounted machines on the back of like a small Kubota 25 horsepower tractor. That worked pretty well. We were getting probably 30% yield increase. Not so much because of this. Well, a lot of it was seed placement, but also just better depth control, better fertilizer application, that type of thing. But that the amount of people that are doing that kind of thing, it's really small. It's it's still a long ways to go in terms of mechanization in a no-till fashion. But it's coming along. So nothing like what you see in Europe or Australia or US in terms of scale.
Steve, you wanna?
And yeah, in fact, it's the same thing that Tim talked about. So it's really smaller exploitation farmers who did this kind of experience with no-till. So they use a little drill, and I don't know the reference clearly, but they're really small. So yeah, we use with my uncle a Horsch drill. We modified it 2 years ago, and it works pretty good. We increase, maybe 15% of our yields on our crops. So yeah, that's a good experience for us. Yeah.
Would that be a hoe drill or a disc drill?
Disc drill.
Just drill, the Horsch.
Yeah.
Disc drill. So next question, Michaela.
Yes. several of you mentioned that you're dealing with very low moisture. I think, Tom, you said 13 to 15 inch rainfall, and Alexander, the 300 to 400 millimeters, that's about 11 to 17 inches for those of us who use inches. So how are you managing to be profitable and grow crops in such low moisture?
Well, how to be profitable? The only thing we can control is our costs. So, we can't control the rainfall, and you can't control Mother Nature. So all we can control is our costs. So we're large scale, so we can, push those things over multiple bigger acres. But at the same time, scale definitely helps. But for us, it's all about that moisture conservation, diversity as well. So diversity in rotations, diversity in cropping species, and then also the addition of livestock as well. So, for us with our cover crops, we understand that our cover crops use moisture. So for us, we need to make money back off those cover crops, and we do that through our livestock component. So we rotationally graze cattle. We run a breeding operation, but we also buy and sell stockers as well that will run on the covers. So basically everything we do needs to be, some sort of profitable. With the cover crops, we've got a seeding cost per hectare of running the machine plus the seed, and we need to be able to recoup those with weight gains on the livestock. But things, the moisture conservation, so that's the zero till and the full stubble retention, 100% ground cover 100% of the time. And then, really, really stringent on what fertilizer we're using, where it's placed, how it works. We've been doing a lot of sap testing in the last 2 years so that we're putting on the right nutrition. If a paddock doesn't need a herbicide, it doesn't get it. If a paddock doesn't need fungicides, it doesn't get it. It's as simple as that. That's where you're really stringent on your costs. You've got to understand your business model and understand what you're spending.
Alexander, any thoughts?
In the end, it's very simple here. Cost reduction. In the end, it's so what I discovered everywhere on the world, it's always the higher the yields are in your area, the more rainfall you have, the higher the rent and the cost for the land. So in the end, you always have to look that you're at least as good as your neighbor or a bit better. So the no-till system really helps us save some money here. With the cover crops, the thing is here, we've seen the same thing. It takes a cover crop uses the same amount of water pretty much like tillage. What we saw in our trails that we're doing. And we don't have too often during the year that we get fog in the morning that the cover crop can get some back. So it's mostly we just do the cover crops when we're really expecting that it's getting a good cover crop on the good soils. When it's a dry year, when it's not raining, we don't put the cover crops. We just use the straw harrow and just let the weeds emerge. And then that's, for example, our cover crops. And we're very low on insecticides. We're very low on fungicides. And that's the main thing here.
Tim, Ashley, or Loran, anything you want to add on no-tilling and drought or low moisture?
Southeast Asia, one of the things that, although it's a tropical region, particularly like Thailand, Vietnam, all the countries except for, say, Singapore, Malaysia, that are right on the equator, even Indonesia, because of the monsoon movements through the year, we have a really distinct, sharp dry season. Like in Thailand, most of the country doesn't get any rainfall at all between say late October and early May or June. And it almost turns from like tropical green to nearly desert in some of the upcountry farming areas. So like in our corn seed business, learning how to, and we did a lot of our seed production in the dry season because it's the easiest time to manage disease. Managing too much water is a real problem in the rainy season. But then in the dry season, with virtually no moisture, then it becomes irrigation management or mulch management, the residue management, and trying to keep that to conserve the moisture. So not a lot on the mechanization side. A lot of it's labor driven, but to some extent it is trying to minimize the tillage and keep as much mulch as we can to hold the moisture.
And in France, so for our system, we don't have any issues with rain or no, for the moment it's good, but the corn producers have a lot of issues because they don't have enough rain, so they must use irrigation system. But now the European and the French government set up a lot of restrictions about use of irrigation system during the summer. So a lot of questions are raised with these last years because we don't have enough, we don't store a lot of rain and water. And so the problem now is how we are going to rain and water our corn and crops that need a lot of rain during the summer. And this is on the same way, the same period when we don't have rain in France. So this is really difficult for us to find a solution, or maybe to just change the drill date or something like that. I don't know for the moment, but yeah.
Well, for me, the biggest thing is to learn water holding capacity and how to, manipulate that with our farming practices. And, that's what we've gotten good at here. I mean, our version of a drought is nowhere near what these guys are talking about. I mean, I can't fathom going 6 months without a rain, I guess I'll put it that way. And I guess that leads to another question I'd have is compaction alleviation. How are you guys handling that? Tom, if you want to jump in there.
Got to have moisture to cause compaction. And we're on controlled traffic. So, been on controlled traffic since, full controlled traffic since 2015. Started the controlled traffic path in 2010. I think our soils are becoming more forgiving. The more soil health and water infiltration and things like that. I think our soils are becoming more forgiving than they probably ever used to be. The main parts of compaction we've got is the road trains at the end of the field taking the grain away. But obviously when we're harvesting it is dry. So we do sometimes do a little bit of tram line renovation, which is just pulling that little bit of dirt, where the spray tracks we'll just pull a little bit of dirt back in with a tram line renovator. But really for us, if a paddock's got compaction bad like that, then it'll come out, go into cover crops and funnily enough go into livestock. I know they say livestock and compaction go hand in hand, but with rotational grazing and we're using cover crops and tillage radish and canola and heaps of different plants. Well, yeah, if we've got a problem with a paddock, it comes out and goes into cover crops and livestock.
Alexander, care to step?
Yeah, so first of all, in this area, compaction is not really a big topic. Like Western and Northern Germany, where it's very wet, they have a lot of trouble with compaction. They are using all the central tire inflation systems. But here in my area, I'm the only one that has the central tire inflation. Just because I come from West Germany and know it, and all the other neighbors, they don't really have an eye on it. So yeah, well, I'm doing as well control traffic farming, but in a light version because we're not allowed to use the 3 meter tracks. But yeah, not a big problem. We put the air pressure down. Like when I'm seeding, I have 0.5 bar on the tires. That's like 7 psi. And spraying with the small tires, double of it, 1 bar or 14 psi. Yeah, that's it pretty much where we're looking at. So as well, we have the oilseed rape, we have the cover crops, we have the earthworms. So yet we don't have compaction issues. As well, just when there's a big field, let's say 40 hectares and above, obviously in the entrance you have some trouble. But that's small area then.
So prevention is kind of your best plan there, is the way I take it?
Yeah.
Tim, you got any feedback from Thailand?
Yeah, compaction, it depends on the area. For generally in Southeast Asia, Thailand in particular, rice paddy areas obviously are by definition almost they're compacted because they're doing paddies. But what's happening there, and some of this is climate driven type work going on where they're trying to get people away from doing so much water paddy application to shifting to more dryland type rice or water on, water off, some of it to cut down on the methane output and stuff. In the upland areas like corn, sugarcane, other areas, there's still a lot of deep ripping going on to try to get away from that. We found in our areas, like Tom's talking about, is putting on cover crops or rotational crops, particularly sunflower, big taproot, good way to break up the soil. And if you can do it, it really helps a lot. Depends on the crops, but trying to get to more of a soil-based outlook on it instead of mechanizing it with deep rippers and things. So probably not as advanced as what you're seeing in other parts of the world, but that's how they're handling it at this point.
In France, it also depends on the area where you are. So compaction is one of the biggest problems they have in the north in France, northwest France. So, but in my area, we don't have compaction problem. We just had compaction problems with sprayer passages, but it's the only thing we had. And now with cover crops, I mean, we reduce our compaction, trying to reduce the pressure of our tires, and yeah.
Michaela, you want to share Tom's video?
Yes, Tom just sent us a video to share with everybody watching, so I'm gonna pull that up here and see if we can get this to work.
Let's explain what's going on there. So that's our John Deere 1890 sowing into stripper straw. So wheat harvested with a stripper header. You can see there, just passing through that residue nicely. Nice sharp discs, not cutting a hell of a lot of residue there because all that residue is still standing up. Even if we do graze those stubbles and we might knock 50% down because we've got sharp discs and plenty of down pressure, we're still able to cut that straw as we go through. Little trivial thing. See on the back there, there's the oversized sign on. That's actually a mouse bait spreader, for spreading mouse bait. And what we're finding, and we found this years ago, and the experts are only just starting to recommend it now for rodent type control. You need to do it, directly behind the air seeder like that for best results. The other thing you can see there is we're on the controlled traffic lines as well.
Nice, thanks for sharing.
Thank you for that.
We have time here for one more question, so I'm gonna. This is a question that was posed from two different people about the potential or the glyphosate restrictions in Europe. They're asking, have any of the agriculture groups or agriculture lobby groups, are they working to educate the lawmakers about no-till and the importance of having glyphosate as a tool?
Maybe Alexander, the answer.
So they're trying as well. A friend of mine, his name is Theodor Friedrich. He was working for the FAO, being in the whole world as a consultant. And he says the politicians are not even listening to me. So he was talking once with our agricultural minister from Germany. She had no interest, zero listening. And Rolf Deabsch, as well as a friend of mine, he was doing all the research back in the 70s and 80s in Paraguay. And he had one of our ministers there. And he explained him the whole system, our plenty hours, was showing him everything. And the minister just answered, well, it's quite nice what you're doing here, but it doesn't fit in our agenda. So they're trying, but it's really, really difficult. I have no idea where it's leading to.
Anybody else want to hit on that one? Nishi, you want to?
I have no idea. I mean, yeah.
I should add, in Thailand's looking to ban Roundup and atrazine and several other. Some of them they've already phased out. Gramoxone's gone, and you're seeing that in India and other countries. The trend is definitely toward reduced chemicals, and I guess a lot of it is consumer driven and public health reasons. Not so much focus on the ag impacts, although the farming groups are certainly putting up, they're saying they need it, and with good reason, a lot of good evidence. But the power of public opinion and the power of politics is pretty strong.
It's interesting that Europe is going this way. Australia has never been hungry. We've never been a hungry country. You hear stories of the older folk that left Europe after the wars, saying that they understood what it was like to be hungry, and food, food security and things like that. So it's really interesting to hear that Europe is going this way, understanding what has happened previously around food security in Europe.
Well, the thing is, we are in a late Roman decadency. Life from the people is too good, and they totally forget about that that there can be a food shortage. Nobody can imagine, because last time it's 1 generation ago.
History repeats.
And I think too, we're finding here in Australia now that, people are 2 generations and 3 generations away from farms. 2 generations ago, everybody had a family member that owned a farm or worked on a farm. You talk to the older generations and they would say, oh, grandpa or auntie or uncle owned a farm, and they would spend time out on a farm. Now, the younger generations and the kids, they have no connection back to the land whatsoever. And that sounds like it's a worldwide issue. They don't know how their food is grown. They have absolutely no idea how agriculture works. They have no idea how much money a farmer puts on the line every year. My wife doesn't come from a farming background. And she admits that she was one of those people. She did not understand how much it costs to go farming every year. You look at some of the really good farmers, they are multi-million-dollar businesses. We should be wearing, Alex, you should be wearing a suit and a tie for what your business turns over, and have a secretary. But, that's just how we farm, isn't it?
Absolutely right.
Well, I think that's a pretty good way to end this, folks, and appreciate all your time and input. If you got one last little tidbit you want to throw out there, I'd appreciate that. Other than that, I don't know if we hit on what people wanted to hear today, but I think it's the thing people needed to hear. Just, the thing I learned when I first started traveling international is farmers speak farmer. And like I said, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. This has been very interesting. It's great to meet everyone, and really learned a lot. Thank you very much for having us in here, Loran.
Yep, thank you, Loran.
And Michaela.
Yep, thank you, Michaela. Been absolutely fantastic. I think we just got to get back and try. And I know it's hard, and I've got to do this myself. But we all farm for a reason. We do it because we love it, and sometimes we just got to, stop, hit the pause button, stand out in the field, and watch corn grow, or watch wheat grow, or watch cattle eat cover crops. That's when Cassie and I take time to pause and go, yep, no, this is why we do what we do, and we love what we do. And we normally would grab a couple of drinks and sit out and watch cattle eat cover crops, and you realise why you love it, and you do what you do.
Well said, Tom.
I don't know how we can end it better than that. So, Michaela, thank our sponsors. Or I'm hoping that Alexander's using A&I parts, and I know that drill that Tom showed, that's got A&I parts on it for sure. I mean, am I right?
Yeah, as well. Thanks for invitation. It's very interesting to hear as well the different perspective from other parts of the world, how it's going there. But in the end, it sounds like we are all having quite similar ideas and perspectives in the end. So even if farming is quite different, and thank you.
Safe day harvesting, Alexander.
Yeah, and with that, I don't have too much more to add other than to say thank you to the panelists and Loran for organizing this. Anyone who submitted a question or comment that we didn't get to, I will send those along to the panelists so they can see your comments and respond if they would like to. As a reminder, this was recorded, so if you'd like to go back and watch anything or share it with anyone, we will be emailing you a link within the next 48 hours to this presentation, so watch your email for that. And as Loran said, thank you to A&I Products for sponsoring the 2023 No-Till Farmer Conservation Ag Operator Fellowship, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day or night, depending on where you are.
Sleep tight, Tom.